like that idea about go ahead and don't think of a red stop sign right now.
Right.
Which is like an interesting thing because it leads, I mean, loosely into this chat I want to have in regards to what we focus on growing. And that idea of once it's in my mind or suggested, it's tough to look away from it or to not manifest it in my mind, like the red stop sign or something like that. And how, one of the reasons that one of the ways in which I'd like to dial myself in better is to have a more organized mind, to be more disciplined in that regard. And I see you as a highly organized mind. And I think that it's mostly because of processes, and you put in a lot of different processes and they overlay and it looks highly organized, but it's also part machine in a way, as opposed to something that you're going to have to take mental nourishment or something like that to service it.
Yeah, I mean, well, firstly, I think I'm pulling a fast one on you. If you think that I'm not nearly as organized as you or anyone else might assume, but I do think that if I have a strategy, it's to an exaggerated level of this idea that personally, I've never been able to affect any change in the past. And I still can't figure out how to do something in the future. And so I dump a lot of energy and focus when I'm doing something, of course, in the present. And there are lots of advantages to this strategy. I mean, like output and quality of work and all of these things. But there are shadows to it as well.
Do you find yourself corralling your mind from the past or into the future to demand presence now? I mean, is that a struggle for you, or do you just seamlessly fit into that? No, this just makes sense, and it's not useful to be here or there. It's useful to be here.
No, I think any self-aware human struggles with that. That's that smarter folks than I have written and discussed this for thousands of years at this point, which is that because we are aware of self, we have both the benefit of planning for the future and reflecting on the past, and also the major downside of being able to have anxiety and think about the future and dwell on the past, whereas like the polar bear doesn't really worry about that kind of thing, right? And that's the reason why, they say that we have dominated the planet, right? Is this awareness of self, because that you're a person like with a name, Tait, and you like have this rich history and this like future that's coming. We can kind of coordinate and do things that, maybe the penguin or the falcon isn't really like planning out his or her week, right?
Right.
And so like, of course, I struggle with that. I think that's part of that is the source of the human struggle, I think. All I'm saying is that if there is a strength in there, it's like emptying the tank in the moment. I feel like I'm not really naturally gifted at a lot. And so I just can't unknow that I kind of get good results if in the moment I just focus my hardest, because it feels like to me I can't really afford not to focus my hardest.
Right.
I'm not good enough to
and whether that's writing a book or doing a bench press or whatever.
Yeah, I'm just not talented enough to be like writing a sentence and talking on the phone at the same time or something silly like that,
What do you think when you say, emptying the tank, what comes out of the tank in order to get present?
I think it's not always physical, but it's just like presence and focus, but I find that it's almost like, I don't think I'm special in this way, but I find that for myself, I come out on the other end of a focused effort, right? Whether like it's holding a conversation, like at the end of this conversation, which will be amazing, I will feel a certain amount of like,
Yeah.
Because like I'm here, I'm not kind of resting in this, and so I think it's just there's a certain like cognitive fatigue, like if I was I don't know, if I was like creating a class plan or something like that, same thing. I mean, not like exerting muscular effort with a whiteboard, but consciously it's like, whew, all right.
Yeah.
And that's because it's not a half-stepping effort, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. There's a nourishing factor that you need to replenish your nourishment stores after it's different than sitting.
You got to eat, you got to sleep,
So inside of that, and this idea about presence and past and future and all that, writing a book is tough for all the obvious ways, but I think something that I find that's difficult in that kind of a reflection and an endeavor like this is that to some degree you're living in the past. Every time that you go into the channel, whether it's sitting down at your table and putting pen to paper or typing or however your process is, but there's an unlocking and a clicking in that has to happen into the past and into this kind of organization, if you will. And in that, was that difficult at all to live there? And then also, because you've got to be hyper present in your day. I mean, your motion in the present is vast. It's multitudes of tasks. And so to do that, and did that seem reductive to your present life, or what was the cost of that attention?
I mean, that tapped me in new ways. I think I knew it going in. Of course, I was ignorant to exactly how that would play out, but it's complex. I wouldn't be able to sum that up in one statement. I mean, some of the things that are at play are, the process of writing a book for some people will be specifically challenging because of the technical demand of writing. And that was less of a challenge to me. Like I think I could crank out some words. But for example, one of my edges that this thing challenged in such a emotional way was the scope of it. And this is what you're talking about with sort of like living in the past, is because at a certain point in the process, there's a manuscript. And the manuscript is so big that my little brain can't see the whole thing at once. It's kind of like how high up do you need to go from Earth to see the whole Earth, right? Which is flat. Like how high up do you have to go? It's like quite high, right? Now, from that height, could you paint like a house?
Right. You can't smell grandma's cookies.
No,
from
you
there.
cannot, right?
Yeah.
And so in order to interact with the manuscript, you have to be close to it. And because I have lots of experience, like thousands of reps writing articles, and something small that I can see beginning, middle, end, I was really tested in my ability to interact with this document at a certain point. And that was brutal. Because you get to a place where, all right, so in order to affect change in this document, do I need to read the book again? Every time I want to make one rep?
Right.
That's insane. And it will make you insane, which, if anyone goes through any sort of long road pursuit, you kind of go through the whole spectrum of emotion, and so that was definitely happening. Then, put that on one side, move that issue to the side. And then, the other big one is that the conversation of the book is quite meta, right? Because it's this like decision-making framework that is basically making this sort of bulletproof argument, or this objective case that it's through our pursuit of our peak expression that we are afforded like premium feedback. That's where we like face ourselves and learn and grow. This is like the secret mechanism for development, right? It's like, call it jujitsu. It's like it couldn't ever be hypothetical. It's like the reason why there is an evolution there, that like you're different, let's say 10 years in than you were 6 months in, is because the environment of training jiu-jitsu forced a really strong mirror to you, right? It's like introducing you to problems and challenges that are the opposite of a hypothetical. They feel like full skin in the game. Like this feels weighty and risky, and I don't really know how to solve for this. And I'm out here on the edge, literally. And so the book writing process, if this was going to be my best effort to say something that kind of hasn't really been said in this way before, then shit. Knowing that doesn't make it any easier. It would actually had to be that kind of difficult. And so that's just a very technical truth of writing it, and so layer that on with the complexity of life, you're not in a vacuum writing this book.
Why'd you want to do it?
Well, two reasons. One is an internal reason, because selfishly I knew that I believed that this was a vehicle for me to like confront or see my edge, like evolve myself. I knew it was a mechanism selfishly to evolve. And now there's lots of ways I could do that, right? I could. Yeah,
there's a very particular way that you also want to share, coach, and also you want to cut out bullshit from people's heads about their excuses, right? It seems like a real excuse eraser. This book.
So the sort of more external reason was that I feel like this needs to be said, and I struggle to, as the author, I realize there's a strong bias here, but I struggle to wonder of a conversation more important than this, right? Because this book is really about how we decide how we will spend our time on this planet. And like most things that I've done business-wise, the spark came from almost like an extreme frustration or like dissatisfaction, right? Like we've talked about the gym before. I feel like I'm a good coach, and I feel very passionate about movement and strength and conditioning. But also, let's be honest, if this country, if it was just normal that we all had our shit together and we're like generally physically capable and self-aware and doing that thing, I would feel zero propulsion to open up a strength and conditioning kind of brand, because it seems like we got this thing figured out, Right. Well, it's like I get outside of, baseball, and I observe that almost everyone that is a quote unquote an adult is so afraid that in mass we are sort of relinquishing our best selves, and which is the craziest part, and we're sort of getting together and telling each other that is the smartest thing that we could do. It's the most responsible thing we could do. And wouldn't it be nice if we could live this sort of best life or this idealistic approach?
But don't you understand my objections?
Yeah, you can't blame us, right? The famous line of like any non-contributing victim, right? My hands are tied. And so I figured it would be a cool experiment to write a book where if you read it, you just could no longer make that case.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, talking to clients and students and stuff like that, it seems like it's always been that way. Is I don't care if you want to eat McDonald's every day or whatever. I don't care if you want to smoke cigarettes. But I do care if you lie to me about that and you tell me I want to have the best life, that's the most fruitful life with the best performance and function possible. And then you're going to tell me a story I'm going to call bullshit because I don't want to hear lies in my ear. And so like, I feel like it's like in that, it's like, this is, yeah, I love that reasoning for this. I just don't like, you can say you don't want to, but let's not pretend that you cannot.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not just, you said, I don't want to hear lies. I mean, you said this to me like years ago, 6-7 years ago, probably at this point, which is, it's not just hear lies. It's people want to share those things with you, as if their hands are tied, because they want you to let them off the hook. If you're my coach, you're like, I got this thing, work's heating up, so obviously I got to put my membership on hold. And you're like, okay, let's talk about what's true here. Work is heating up. Also, there's just too many examples of you don't need to put your membership on hold. So I'm not going to help you lie, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be
I've had
corroborating your
adults
lie.
tell me they couldn't eat well,
Right.
because they're like, I've got kids.
Right.
And I go, then you're telling me that's child abuse. You're
Right.
telling me you let the kids lead a grown ass adult house. Like, that's insanity. And you're supposed to be leading these people. That's the thing for me, is it seems like there's a higher responsibility in that, like, if you know better, you ought to be letting others know better sooner, so they can do better later, because their evolution to a higher vibration helps all of us. So that, like, we need that, right? We need everybody to be winners.
And that's the problem with this sort of like path of least resistance thing. We already have just in our DNA this this pull. It's like a force of gravity towards the easier thing. Like, there's this shitty version of ourselves. It's like, it's okay. Like
It's almost like if you open the floodgate, there's a downward cant,
Yeah.
and it'll all just flow down there and it'll be easy.
So it's like, yeah, left to our own devices, it's going to be a little bit harder to like pursue, let's say, a path of slightly more resistance. So we have that already going against us.
Don't you think there's a pull towards that also? There's a pull towards your greatest self, but it's quieter.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would like to believe that, and one of the things that's presented in the book is, because I feel like there was some responsibility that I had to explain, well, why are we making decisions on this broken model? And the broken model is, most people, let's say, listening, believe they have two bad choices. Behind door number one is an idealistic pursuit, what would draw the best out of them, what they really want with their life, however you want to say it, their dreams, something like this, which is characteristically irresponsible. It's risky. Okay, that's door number one. And then door number two, the only other choice is a socially reinforced, safer, more reasonable approach that guarantees the life you don't want. Okay. And now if you have those two choices, it's like, well, unless you're a psychopath, you just choose the smart one. And what I'm proposing is that this is completely broken and untrue. And the reason why that model sort of exists is, and this goes back to why I'm bringing this up, which is that we have both inside of us, inside of you, inside of me, and anyone listening. There is a compelling need for certainty and safety. This is like in our DNA, because we just wouldn't have made it this far in our evolution if we had no filter and we were like, let's pick the most dangerous thing, right? That doesn't help us evolve. Yeah. Now, if that was the only thing that was inside of our DNA, then we would be a pretty diminished, small-minded being, right? So there's the other side of the coin, which is this curiosity thing that, like, figure of speech drove us to leave the cave, right? It's like the reason why we built the ships and like went across the oceans is like, well, that's definitely not the safest move, but there's this curiosity.
And it's also that I think there's a thing about evolution, about growth, that like once you've reached a plateau in your own mind, you want to go to the next. Just like once you've reached a plateau and there's unexplored territory, it's like, we've got safety in the cave. We've got fire. We've got endless food. It's okay. Here we are day after day until we die in the cave. And you watch that cycle go by for generations or whatever. And then you're like, I got to see what else it's unsafe, but like I there's this calling into that void that then becomes whatever, you know?
Yeah. And that's in all of us. I think what I was trying to articulate a second ago is call staying in the cave the path of least resistance, right? And then like leaving the cave is like slightly more resistance. Well, there are group dynamics. Okay, so if I'm alone in the cave, then I have to sort of sort this out, right? I'm like, okay, stay in the cave. It's like, I know how this is. This is certain, more or less. Going outside of the cave is a little uncertain. I don't know what that's like. It feels more risky. And then I have to sort that out in my head. Well, in groups, we don't only have to sort it out in our head. We both sit in the cave, and maybe there's 12 of us or 15 of us or 100 of us. And what I'm saying is this path of least resistance is extra dangerous in groups because we can support each other's fear, right? Like if deep down you're like, man, I really wonder what it's like out there. Also, I'm scared. When we hang out together, either we are a community of support that is supporting like this expansion, or we're like, hey, like it would be scary out there, right? We got to stay in here. Like, hey, we don't really have a choice. We'd be crazy to go out there, right? And we're talking about caves or whatever, but this is what's happening.
And you also make it your responsibility. And these people need me, or the cave needs to be defended, or et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of reasons.
So what I'm saying is there's a dangerous stage set with like what's in our DNA, and then just natural group dynamics where if we're not careful, you can find yourself surrounded by communities or workplace environments or relationships or friendship circles or whatever that's supporting this sort of fear-based, diminished version of yourself. And we have to do that. Like if you choose door number 2, so to speak, like if I'm like, hey, I would really love to explore teaching and learning the arts and, living in California, that's something that's inside of you. But instead, because you're afraid and it feels more certain to stay in your hometown and to pick the newest, hottest, trending career path and all these sort of socialized things, you may find yourself being supported in embracing your fear, right? And like not leaving the cave, so to speak. But we do have both inside of us. And this whole framework is based on a lie, which is that, I keep using this door analogy, but behind door number 1 is this ideal path, ideal choice that in our head is risky and uncertain. And that is more or less true. But the lie is that door number 2 is certain and safe, right? People want to believe like, well, I would like to play music, but let's be honest, the medical industry is hot, right? And the case that is made in here in this book is that there are certain developmental advantages to you exploring what will really test your edge. And there are major liabilities to seeking this thing that is pseudo safety, right? Because now when you get laid off or the job industry changes, AI is coming. Like if you're not about something, like forget your technical skills, you're not about something, you're about to be obsolete as fuck, On
a global scale, bigger than we've ever seen. How many people do you think will be affected in 15 years?
Well, I think
10 years.
Well, I think everybody will be affected, but here's the thing: like, remove the details of your job and the words that come out of your mouth and like how you walk into a room. Like, remove like the details of that. It's like this is the way I like to say it: is like, who would you rather hire? You're an entrepreneur. Who would you rather hire? Who would you rather go to lunch with? Who would you rather date? Who would you rather, enroll in anything difficult with? Who would you rather walk down a dark alley with? Someone who has spent their life pretending that there's some sort of safety and certainty and avoiding these sort of confronting environments, or the person who has continually explored their edge. Like, put the results aside. You know what I mean? I would rather hire someone who went for it and quote unquote failed and has grown up and evolved and all these other things than someone who has told themselves a story that life is about avoiding what's difficult.
Yeah.
It's like very clear at that point.
Yep.
You know?
And it's clear too, because there's people that pretend as if they're on the one side of things that are clearly not, and just can't understand it. But you can look at utility and go, oh, that person doesn't have any usefulness at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's interesting
Mm-hmm.
that they think that they do. And that's the other thing about this developmental thing is that, I mean, I want, you know, it's like, yeah, I'd rather rest on my laurels. That's strong with me.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like cancerous. It feels like I'm doing a dark thing inside me that also is a inception of a seed that's going to grow and overtake my whole being if I start to relent. And that whole thing, you know, talk about hold the standard, is like, to the degree that I let my standard suffer, it is to the degree that I kind of erased my foundation a little bit, and I don't have footing anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the heightened dangers.
And then, well, there's this other thing that is exaggerated right now because of how easy it is to share information. And it's kind of ironic, right, that we're on a podcast. So by the time someone interacts with this, like they watch it or they listen to it, they're seeing a result where they weren't like privy to anything before this, right? And so it might appear to someone in the audience that, like, this is how life is done. You grab a couple mics, you sit down, you start talking about ideas. Right. It's like, no, hold on. Like, there was a whole thing that sort of isn't filmed because it would be boring. It would be mundane, right? This is what excellence is built on.
And to be clear about that, like, that statement is like one you just wash over, but like, what excellence is built on is the trivial, mundane, monotonous day to day. It's boring. Success mostly looks boring. And then you see the snapshots in the light and you're like, look at Steve Jobs there on stage. It's fucking, the whole life is the boring, turning the wheel and staying to it, staying true to it. That consistency is.
Yeah. And like, so it's hard to really do that justice. Like, I know you really well. Like, you're one of my closest friends. Also, I also know that I wasn't around when you were getting reps and reps and reps and reps and all of the things that have sort of informed who you are today, right? And so now is an interesting time because it looks like a lot of people are successful or have something to say because they're saying it.
Because there's a light on them.
Right. You know, something. And it's like, you know, not too long ago, like, unless you were on television, like, you don't see anything. Right. And so it seems like, or it could seem like today as an observer, that this maybe is excellent. And it's like, no disrespect to like this, I'm enjoying myself, but it's also like, I think I respect you enough to realize that, like, the reason why this is meaningful to me is built on a whole bunch of stuff that's like unfilmable, unpodcastable, uninstagrammable, right? And if people don't have that awareness, then they may be duped. You know, it's like, I don't want to be too shitty, but there's a lot of this conversation about, you know, maybe like Instagram is only like the best of life. These people are like, you know, it's like, you know, it's morphing our view of what is real. And it's like, are you like, if you're a dummy, like, well, I've never assumed that a famous person or an influencer or a fucking whomever on Instagram, like that's all of their life. Like, I would hope that I'm complex enough to realize that, like, they don't have avocado toast for every meal, you know, like, grow the fuck up.
That's the thing about the breaking of yourself too, is that's like you said, it's unfilmable. It's not, I mean, you know, you see, it's amazing. Instagram is an amazing reflection in the way that it's like, here's maybe one of the most beautiful people you've ever seen in your life in their underwear or whatever. And they're going, you know, some days you just don't feel pretty. And it's like, there's nothing but boners, a sea of boners and wet pussies all around you. And you're saying that you're being very vulnerable right now. You have no idea that even looks ridiculous. It's like that. It's an insanity. It's a real insanity. And you have no buy-in in the game. And the thing about the game is it's like, yeah, it's a breaking game. It's a game where you're crushed. It's sweat. There's no way to get a picture. Mm-hmm. You're involved in life. And that's the thing about, I mean, yeah, it's a weird trick what's happening in that way.
Yeah, I've recently spent some time thinking and talking about this misunderstanding of success and failure and risk because of, and it dovetails what we're saying right now, which is that it's the way time works, right? So in your life, you live your life in order, right? Okay. So you're born, and then you're a baby, and then right, and that goes in order linearly, obviously. But when people come to find you, right? They see a blue check mark, they see you on a show, they see you at a thing on a stage somewhere. Their experience does not include that linear path. Mm-hmm. So they see an end result. And this already skews their understanding of your life or any successful person's life. And this is backed by science that we as people downplay other people's failures. We exaggerate their successes. Because we know them quite well, play up our failures and downplay our successes. And so we're living on a skewed reality. By the time I see you on the stage, I can't unknow the end of this story. But that's not how you experienced life, right? And so even if you were to tell me, if you were to like write on a piece of paper all of your failures and like bad moods and all this stuff, I still would be privy to how it ends.
And you wouldn't really believe it.
Right. It's skewed. It's skewed in that way. Like, yeah. So it's like, I use the same examples all the time, but Nike, you read like Shoe Dog or whatever. And it's like, we can't unknow how that story ends. Multi-billion-dollar powerhouse.
They're taken care of.
They're going to be okay.
Their kids are fine.
But that's not how the early Nike folks experienced it. And I can't like Men in Black, like erase my memory with that like thing to experience the story of Nike without knowing how it ends. Sure. And so none of those jabs and shortcomings land on me the way that they land on Phil Knight, right? And so the other example I talk about is like Michael Jordan, right? It's like we can't wait to tell the story of him getting cut from his basketball team. We love to tell that story. And it's like cute and like kitschy. But you can't appreciate what that really is because you already know he becomes the greatest of all time.
He lives.
Right.
Nike doesn't die. Phil Knight's looking at it like this is the end tomorrow. Conor McGregor is a great example in that, like, you look at Conor 8 years ago, that's a brokester dude who, if you were to say, yeah, Conor got offered a job at a local plant, he was going to be a supervisor, he was going to make, $80K a year, and he was going to have insurance and fucking get a work vehicle. He'd be like, fuck, or keep fighting for 2,000 to fight, 2,000 to win, like things like that. Like, no, he's got $100 million right now. It's like that kind of thing. It's like you can't understand what the choice is for him to continue doing the thing he loves, as opposed to, quote, selling out, or what people would argue, you're taking good care of your family and you're making the right choice, right?
And it's like, and if you're not in the skin of that person walking linearly through their life, kind of miss me with the commentary. It's like I make reference to, like, my story just happens to be in this like baseball thing, right? So when I was a kid, I was super supported all the way through. I don't want to sound like the world was against me or whatever, but like there's a thing that happens when you're little and you tell people I'm going to play professional baseball, and they like don't let you leave eye contact till you give them. They're like, well, if it doesn't, what's your backup plan?
Right.
And it's like, okay, like I guess I'll just come up with something that's like totally disingenuous right now. Like this is what it is.
The best thing to do, I think, if you're listening and there's any adults out there that ask you that, is to go, hell, I hadn't thought about it, but I could do whatever it is you're doing.
That's right.
Because that looks like you just mailed it in.
That's
That's everybody that would ask you that question, you'd be right.
So it's like the non-skin in the game front runner commentary is on the front end. They're like, hey, like, I don't want you to get your heart broken. Let's like be realistic here. What's your backup plan? Stay in school, this, that, and the other thing. Then I go pro, and it's like that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like
I told you,
you play till they take the jersey off your back, and it's like, what? This is weird. Like I just walked through the last 20 years like in a different experience that didn't afford this kind of commentary.
Your voice was different a minute ago.
You know, like, and so with awareness of what I just said, which is objectively true, like because we don't experience other people the way we experience ourselves. You, me, Taylor, anybody who's listening, we're set up to see other people as more successful and less apt to failure than we are ourselves. And the opposite is true for us, that we're going to see ourselves as more apt to failure, and we're not going to appreciate our successes as much as we do other people. So like starting from that baseline, how are you orienting yourself in the world? And most people, most low performance motherfuckers, look at successful people as like cut from a different cloth because like they can't relate. Dude, look at that. I can't do that. I try stuff and it feels shitty. They try stuff and they get like Academy Awards. And what high level people realize is like their experience is full of dissatisfaction and trying something and it not working out the way that they want. But, you know, my theory or my opinion is that high level people just have a different relationship with dissatisfaction, right?
I think it comes like when this is an interesting idea when you talk about success and failure, and like we've been chewing on that a lot for the last bunch of years, really. And you said another thing. You said success and failure and risk, and I think almost you could cross out the success and failure part and just go, how much are you risking? And we can gauge a lot on people like that, like risk more, risk to the point when it would really take away from you. And then you can peel it back a little bit. But like, if you're not going to put your risk in, there is no reward. There's no chance to win. And you must just continue to risk. And it's always going to feel like I mean, if you're one of those, like I'm not a fan. And so I'm always going to feel like a failure to some degree, but that's not going to dictate whether I do or do not risk again. Right.
And it's so funny, right? Like talking about this stuff, it gets kind of like corny really quick, right? Because they're words that get thrown around a lot, like risk and like success, and they're weighty. They come with baggage, I think. But if you look at the mechanics of how development happens in anything, the risk part is sort of it's a key ingredient because the effort or the repetition or the practice or the whatever, the environment you're in has to stretch you. And that's the risk, right? That you're going to try something and it's not going to work. Okay. So, you know, like I'm dog shit at basketball, right? But if we put the hoop right here, like in front of me, waist high, and I take the ball and I'm just like dropping the balls in there, it's like, is this now practice? Because there's no risk. I'm not going to miss one of these fucking shots. So do I spend 10,000 hours doing this and now I get to play in the NBA? Or no, at some point I need to move the basket like further away and like higher up. And then now by definition, there's more risk. I can take a shot and I can't really fucking guarantee it's going to go in there because I'm not good at this, right? And that's true of evolution in anything. You know, if jiu-jitsu stayed hypothetical to where practicing jiu-jitsu on day one was like, you know, an arm bar from the guard, drilling, you know, 10 reps on each side. At some point, you master that enough to where you need to move the needle to the next thing.
Right.
And it doesn't make the previous work not important.
Right.
But the risk that you're saying is in that, like, well, we have to be in an environment that offers us a chance to fail, because that would be by
novelty
definition
to grow into, kind of
stretching us, right? Yeah. And so the fake reality or the misconception is that there's some sort of place, there's some sort of like level where that stops being important. And you know, if you want to go full corny mode, like that's how horizons work, right? It's like the horizon's out there and there's space between me and it. But then when you get there, it's further along. And
Right.
that's how development works.
you reset your standard.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is if you look at development in that way and how practice works or skill acquisition works, risk is like tethered to that. Like there's no such thing as that without risk.
Right.
Because then it wouldn't be practice or work that evolves you. The risk is in trying and failing, right?
It has to not work.
It has to at some point.
Like
not
everybody
work.
I ever taught anything to, like in jiu-jitsu, is like fucking triangle just doesn't work. I can't fucking, and it's like, it's not going to work against me, but it can work against a fellow white belt, and that kind of thing. And then leveling up, like, oh, can you pull it off on a blue belt? Who can you? And that's one of the language in jiu-jitsu is like, well, is your darts getting great? Cool. Who are you pulling it off on? Are you doing it live? Who are you pulling it off on? You know, and there's all these levels. You can do it in practice first, get good practice in that, and all that leveling is fantastically important. And just, you know, that realization for me of going, oh, does this thing not work? Or am I just not very good at this thing? You know, and those are the processes that I'm interested in putting myself in those things that make me puzzle myself and go, no, what is true about this?
Yeah.
You know, and about me in through this. Cause that's, I mean, every activity I've ever done is just another variant for how to get manifest expression out of me.
Yeah. And so now that, you know, I think anyone with 2 ears who's listening to this conversation would be like, yeah, I get it. I agree. Okay. So now that we maybe agree on what we just said, how silly is it of an approach to be like, okay, I'm going to set up my life to avoid all of that. Like, and that's what people are doing. They're like, I think there's a certain job or there's a certain place I can live or there's certain people I can be around where I'm completely safe and certain and in control of the outcome. That's the same thing as putting the basketball hoop at my waist in front of me and just dropping basketballs in it
And
like
then
an
guys
idiot.
say in your frat, they'll be like, dude, you got it dialed in. That's it every day. Just do that.
Live
Awesome.
the dream, you know, or
Fucking
whatever.
perfect.
Yeah.
And for the next guy that cares about anything, that's
Yeah.
a rotting of self.
And objectively, that's just insane.
I think it's great though that most people take that.
Why?
The reason why is because it makes it so easy to win.
That's right.
It's so easy to be it's easier to be in the game now than ever, especially with Instagram. There's so many bad ideas that are amidst all the genius that's there that like enough people adopt to that because they're like, that seems easy. I'll do that. Awesome. Cool. When you catch up in 25 years,
Yeah.
I'll be just counting money.
Which you won't. You know, like yeah, that's totally it. And everything we just said sort of guarantees a certain amount of difficulty, like a certain amount of plight. So you know, your experience of what you're trying to do is inherently difficult, but by comparison, and no one's trying to hear this, but I've been thinking it and saying it since forever. Man, when I got out of baseball, I was looking around like, oh, it's like this? Like this is easy.
Yeah.
Like when you're a kid,
You level down.
everybody talks about how hard life is. And I was like, wait, what? Like these people don't show up for shit.
I get to slack my standards to almost nothing.
Yeah. And so
If I'm just on time, I've
you're
won.
different.
I'm an
You're
uncommon
rare.
man if I'm on
Right,
time.
yeah.
It's crazy. But so in that too, as far as imparting this to other people, and God bless anybody that adopts anything that you hear when you read Going Right. But how frustrating is it to try to deliver? And do you have anything attached to the deliverance of the information and into the reception of? You know what I'm saying?
I
Because
know
at the end of the day, you're the fish you got to catch, and I want to impart change. I believe that you guys want change because you're saying that to me. Here's this process I built, and I've really thought about it. I put a lot into it to get this change and go.
Yeah. I think you already know the answer to this because you've coached people and things, right? And this is like the paradox of coaching or like imparting any information on someone, which is by definition, objectively, I am not responsible nor capable of controlling anybody else's actions or desires. Like that's outside of my control, just by definition. So I have to relinquish that at some point. Now, that's not license or excuse to be ineffective at my job, right? And so it's both. You know, you're coaching someone in fitness, or you're coaching someone in jiu-jitsu on the mats. It's like you have to take ultimate ownership and accountability of your craft, your ability to communicate the thing and to get the desired result. And you have to be open to the truth, which is that ultimately you're not responsible for other people.
Right.
Right. So it's like, I got a full-time job over here. How do I write the best, clearest, most captivating message? And like, that's a full-time job, you know, like there's no giving up or vacation in that role. And I have to like allow myself the freedom that I can't walk around and shake people one by one and like jam something into their head, right? And so it's a weird kind of like non-dual thing where the way that I do the imparting of knowledge better is actually like just doing my job better, you know? But if I evaluated or hung my hat on or was emotionally connected to how other people reacted or took on the information, then I would just make myself crazy, right? And that,
but isn't that part of it too? And is that not a constant battle for you, or is it?
yeah, I mean, I think it's
Because for me, I'm continually in that struggle.
It's a battle. I think I'm not great at it. I think it's something that I'm sort of working on. And in any leadership role, I mean, to be honest, the book feels almost like easier because of how daunting it feels to like change a worldview for a general population. But, you know, with 2 feet on the ground, I think the stuff that I struggle with and deal with more that is in the same exact concept is like leading other people like in flesh and blood in my, you know, businesses or, you know, real life, you know, day to day, right? Which is like, I am fully responsible for how effective or ineffective I am at communicating and leading other people. And ultimately, I cannot control another person. I can't make them want something that they don't want for themselves and all of these things, right? And so I think that approach maintains a certain important burden of responsibility and doesn't allow that to be injustice to myself, right? Because it would be completely unjust if my emotional well-being was tied to someone else's desires or goals, right? Like
it's chaos.
Yeah, if a client has like cake for breakfast, like yes, I can circle back about what of my communication of training and the expectations is unclear, and I can't put food in this person's mouth. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But you know, I there's a certain irony, I think, with this kind of book, right? Which is like, if you're smart enough or aware enough to seek it out, statistically, you need it the least in the planet, right? So it's like, okay, there's that, and that's quite frustrating, you know. So one of the things that I've spoken about, which I'm trying to not be like a used car salesman, sleazy sales guy on it, but it's like, given that dynamic, I tell people this is the book that you gift to someone that you see sort of this like untapped greatness in, right? And because we all have those people. I mean, the thing was written based on just observing thousands of these people, right? Which is like, you just want to shake someone and be like, what are you doing? You know, like, why are you hiding this thing and pretending that you're somehow safe?
You don't have to seek truth and a
Right,
higher self
yeah.
and all that stuff. I know. I just drove by him. He's tanning on the fucking. He's outside right now in a fucking rocking chair, being useless.
Oh, no.
Still,
You
I know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I know. I know. How can I get you to love you enough to fucking make the right fucking choice, bro? Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, and I do want to add that this is all a very important individual pursuit, like everything we've talked about today.
But at the same time, I don't want to fuck with anybody that's not on the pursuit.
That's it.
Because it fucking robs me, man. It pulls me off my square. It lets me show that mediocre bullshit is acceptable. And aren't we great? Let's slap each other on the dicks. It's fucking. It's a retarded jack off train of fucking mediocre losers.
And that is totally it, because everything we've talked about up until this point is a very important introspection, right? It's like a mirror. You're like looking at this thing like a mirror, and you're like, fuck, man, like, what am I doing? Like, who am I? What am I about? Where am I headed? What environments am I in?
Where are my values?
The whole thing. And
because
so,
this, to me, this book is like an operator's manual for the soul.
Yeah.
Right. And the next book is like an operating manual for who the fuck is your picket fence.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it briefly touches on that, but there is a collective version of this conversation. And that's what you're talking about. You're like, this is so hard. And so
I think of it like this. This is how I curate myself to bring myself to the party. Whether that's a relationship. I mean, don't come with all your old shit to your new relationship. That's going to be dog shit for your new lover or whatever. Like all of that stuff, right? Is like, how do I clean myself up enough to be able to be presentable and a useful member of the new party? And like in that party, I want them to be fucking high vibrating people. Otherwise I sink.
Yeah. It's that community of support, not of the fear, not of the like losers, like our hands are tied victim mentality, but it's that choosing to pursue idealism, like knowing full well that that's not real. You know, I mean, that's what all these sort of iterative processes are, right? Like you sign up for the jiu-jitsu competition, you go there to win, like you go there to tap everyone, and that's the thing. And then like something else happens. Even if you win the thing, like you give up a position, something happens, right? You play the basketball game to fucking hit 3-pointers every fucking time. Yeah. You don't play the game to like turn over the ball or foul a guy or whatever, but like that's what shows up every time. And so if you're smart enough, savage enough, high level enough to pursue idealism, that's a vulnerable thing. You're literally signing up for a certain amount of failure. Now, doing that alone only makes that harder, right? So it's the reason why there's this collective version of it, which is like, well, you can make teams, communities, you know, idealistically nations, and
companies
and
are made like
worlds,
this. Yeah.
that can support this type of effort. I mean, without getting too far into the weeds, it's like the collective performance. So like high performance groups do a certain thing that we're doing individually, ideally, which is that it creates an environment that demands a best effort. And in order for someone to give their best effort, they need to feel, one, like willing enough to do that. Like it needs to matter enough. And they also need to feel like it's okay to give their best and then fail, right? And like, you know, you're a person in my life where it's like, I know that if I sent it max effort in some sort of pursuit and it didn't quite work out, you wouldn't be like, yo, Logan, eat dicks, I'm out. Right? You'd be like, dude, we're in this, like we're doing the thing, right?
Being in the try.
Totally. And so now when you cultivate communities, teams, businesses, or whatever, where everyone in that group, one is like drawn to giving their best effort, operate at their edge, right? Like there's risk there.
Right.
And can fail and it be like not like celebrated for the sake of failing, but celebrated for the sake of stretching yourself.
Glad you're in the game.
Now there's this like this opportunity for greatness, right? And what's scary is if the opposite is true, if I'm in a team or a company or a community or a nation where I can't do that, it feels like I will be shamed or outcasted or whatever, then you know what for sure is going to happen is I'm for sure not going to try my hardest and risk that. Right. And
well, and most of that shit, is like ego risk. I don't want to lose face, you know. And you look at like what self are you saving, your ass or your face? You know, you can't look good as you go through life, fucking trying hard. You're gonna look gruesome, as many still shots in CrossFit will show us. You know what I mean, or whatever, right? It's like it's a fucking gruesome look. It's not you can't do both. You've got to show your ass and just go. And the thing though that's troubling is that everybody's like, I'm in the game. And it's like, it's almost like, you know, when I was a competition fighter and other people would be like, they'd have a tap out shirt and be like, yeah, man, you know, it's tough for us when we're doing
guys
this
like
thing.
us.
You know what I mean? And all that. And it's just like, there's no lower form of life than you, bro. And those guys think that they're right in lockstep with you, you know? And that's the thing that's the most troubling thing. And so for me, I just get on this, you know, it's slaughter season, man. And fucking, I don't give a fuck, man. You want to pretend? Fuck you. I'm going to call you out here, online, wherever the fuck, because I got to stay on my square. And you're over there fronting like this, man. We got to get busy and go. We got to cut heads off. This is execution season, man. And we've got to drive towards that. And if I don't have energies driving towards that, then all you are is deflating the balloon in a way, right?
Totally.
And so it's like you gotta, you know, one of the best things is like, how do you separate who's who, right? And I just go, man, if this guy's in the game, I see him in the game. I can see you can see people's risk, you know? And that's one of the things about you, like fucking, you've been just throwing dice since I known you. And watching you go out of the gate and do that, I go, oh, well, let's see. This will be interesting. Let's see what happens, you know? And then I watch it and I go, okay, I'll dip my toe in that. And I fucking go and jump in and we're at the bluffs and like, and you know, you watch this progression happen, dude. And it's been phenomenal to watch guys like you and Mark Sisson and things like that develop and where it goes and kind of the output and the good that it puts in the fucking world. Cause that's the life-changing shit. And everybody wants to be about that when they see the result, like what you're saying. But God damn it, get your boots on the fucking ground, lace up and get in the game.
Yeah, they want to be a part of it. And this is what keeps me an optimist, you know, I'm not like full pessimist, is that I really see a universal human connection to that, where people, they sort of like you said, like you kind of like perk your ears up. You're like, what? Like, what's going on over here? I kind of want to see what that's all about. They're risking what? They're doing what? Oh, that's a max effort. I want to stand next to that and be with, you know, see what that's like. And you know,
it piques interest.
It piques interest, curiosity, because we all want that. And some people are, you know, it's a full-time job how much they're diminishing that they want that. Yeah. But they still got a poster on their wall of, you know, their favorite actor, and it's like, well, what's that about? I mean, it's not because you like the movies that much, it's because there's something about that person living at their edge, shining, that I think you're attracted to, is my theory. And so, you know, we're all in our bubbles, right? And my old bubble was baseball, and so you hang out with certain people and you talk about certain things. You embody what I just described, which is, hey, we're out here. This is a bloodbath of failure. People's like dreams are ending on the daily. So we're gonna get together.
And we got suture kits. We're putting them together again. However,
but it's real.
There is a risk.
You're out there, and so. You hang out with and you spend time with people that are also pursuing that thing. And I, in my small mind, my previous self thought that was like industry specific, right? Like, I'm an athlete, I hang out with other athletes because this is what we do and this is what we talk about. And then I got like to be a regular person or whatever and just out in the world trying to figure something out. And then I observed that was an assumption. And this is where this optimism comes in, is like, don't want to be like name dropper guy, but I found myself in certain rooms in the last several years where it feels like I kind of like don't belong, but there is legends, high level, Hall of Fame level people across industries. So now it's no longer like we hang out because we talk about making movies together or making records together or winning championships together. I'm not just like, as an observer, I'm like, oh, these people are hanging out because they need this support of their vulnerability, and the details don't matter.
Right.
The details straight up don't matter, that you look across the room and you're like, oh, you win championships and I make rap records, and we need each other because both of these things are vulnerable and hard. And you mentioned the bluffs. It's like, I recognize that truth for the first time when, we're carting the gear out to the park or whatever. And in the beginning, people are like, oh, that's crazy, man. You guys are out there. It's cold in the morning or whatever. And then a year later, it's kind of like, oh shit, like y'all are still
1 year later.
Y'all are still out there.
Let me paint a fucking picture of a year later. A year later is two guys that for every fucking day before the sun is up, they're loading up a pickup truck with kettlebells, with Olympic bars, and with free weights to go and serve an unknown amount of people that may or may not show up on this grassy bluff on the fucking like along Santa Monica. Yeah. And in that, there's emptiness because we're crazy going to do this thing and doing it anyway. And then staying there anyway. And regardless if anybody shows up or not, we're going to fucking be there tomorrow too. And that kind of thing, it's like building my gym and building mats and going, I sat on those fucking mats alone a lot of the time. It wasn't important that you were there. It was important that I was there. And showing up every fucking day for fun and for free. You're paying rent on a thing. You're putting all the cost into it. It's taking everything from you. And then you hear somebody that tries something for 6 months or a year and they're like, yeah, I need to get out here and make money. I just haven't had it's like fucking eat a sack of cock, kid. Yeah. Go on back. You haven't had a job. Until you get a real fucking job sometime and you have to suffer in fucking regular labor. How about you miss me with your fucking opinion? When I watched what you guys did and dig into that, like that was next level. That's real faith. That's walking faith of like, I'll do good work. I know I'm doing good work and I know I have value here and I'm going to present it to the public for fun and for free and let's go. And it's like, it's one of the most beautiful things I ever got to see as far as like this idea put into actual physical skin, carbon. This is happening.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. I think you reflect that back to me as well, in your pursuits. But what I'm sort of proposing is that at a certain tipping point, people were like, "Oh, they're still out there. Oh, dang, there's like a little," and then they want to be next to it. We get the gym here in Venice, and it was like cheating at that point because so many people were just so proud and interested in being next to that type of vulnerability that it was like it was like a community celebration. Like, we did this. Oh my God. Like, it's almost like celebrating hope, like you can do this thing.
And it was never a thing. I don't think it was in my mind anyway. And anybody I talked to of like, I wonder if this will work. It was just full knowledge that this is happening. Yep. Look at what's occurring because we were in the occurring. It was happening and it was dictated by your fingers. It was really phenomenal. I mean, as far as the aspect of like, here's my idea and I'm not guessing of whether it's work. I've hinged the advantages so far in my favor that this is occurring. This is what's happening.
And I think maybe at the sort of basement ground floor level of what's behind that is, we go back to this decision making, these like two doors, right? And the certain door, the one that feels safe, the word for that is like determinism, right? Like part of us, and I would say like a shitty part of us that wants to be safe is attracted to what feels safer amongst the two choices. But that story's already written, man. Like, how that's going to go. You're sort of writing in stone your life. But the thing that attracts people to maybe like what you saw in the park or whatever is like, if this is true, Like if they can just make something up, then they're holding the pen, and it's not deterministic. And this whole life isn't just meaningless. It's not like paint by numbers, follow the leader. Like, I mean,
I'd never heard it said the way you said it one day. And you go, you were there coaching at the Bluffs, and I might have been the only one in earshot. I don't know. And you go, I wonder how amazing this looks to everybody else. Because for me, it's amazing. Because look at what I thought up in my head, and now is occurring. I thought this whole job up, this whole idea in my head. It's a thing that wasn't there before. Like what you're talking about, this idea of putting the pen to life,
making it up. Yeah, and I'm this is just my personal bias. The downside of it is I'm very irresponsible and don't generally keep a calendar. But the premise is like, if life is deterministic, you get into these arguments of like fate and nature versus nurture. Like, I don't want any part of that, because if my life has already been decided for me, like, what are we doing? Am I on a ride at Disneyland? I need to believe, in order to wake up in the morning, I need to believe that this is non-deterministic, and that I can do something here. I can affect change. And so door number 2, choosing this like safe route, part of what the prize you get for what feels safe is it's determined. You have no say in how that goes. The prize worth playing for, and this kind of like door number 1 thing that people want to say is risky, is you have some control.
Yeah.
You have a say in how this goes.
I think for me, a lot of it had been like, you avail yourself to a process, you get a result. And they'd say, they'll say, oh, well, only so many people, if alcoholics are given this protocol for recovery, there's a certain percentage that will adopt that and that will get well.
Mm-hmm.
And when that was presented to me, I thought, that has to be bullshit. I had to make it bullshit in my mind, because I needed to know that 100%, if I did this to the letter and I had a standard with it and I was diligent, that I'd have a fucking result. I needed my life saved.
Yep.
And that's what happened for me. And so that's what I believe about processes. And then the more processes I avail myself to, or call them games, the sobriety game, the CrossFit game, the economics game, the I'm a housemate game, I'm a lover game, whatever the game is. It's like there's processes for how to do things better than I would do them just by myself. And to adopt those processes, then it's like having money. Money's not going to make me happy, but it's going to give me a lot of options that I wouldn't have otherwise. And it gets away a lot of things out of the way, right? And the same kind of thing with being useful or putting more and more processes over myself is like, I can get so much more predictive with the gamble of rolling the dice in my life that the horizon, the road gets narrower, kind of.
It's less of a gamble because you have some control,
and the horizon gets bigger. The fruits get bigger, and I can enjoy them more. And the road is easier because I've dialed it in more. So the more that I engage in life, I guess, the more I win. It feels like, and I was just confused because without that idea, I felt like a pinball in the pinball machine, that like life happens and now I'm here. I didn't feel like I could be directive. I felt like really powerless and helpless in that. And when somebody told me that maybe there was a different way, at first it was scary because the amount of fucking responsibility that I knew was going to be required for me to be able to pull it off was all. And I'd never done that before.
Totally.
And I was like, I don't know that I can muster that. And then I thought, well, I'll try. And we'll give it my all. And then I started to be able to build some confidence if not in myself, but at least in the process.
They talk about man hours. There's a great. It's almost like a tangent, but the point is there's a book about gamification and how powerful it is if we could harness it. Basically, there's more man hours each year of people playing Halo on their video games to where we could build the Great Pyramids like 3 times over, and if we could like harness that kind of thing. And so it's like there is so much man hours and time spent dodging personal responsibility. It's like, man, how much extra time would we have to actually do things if we weren't constantly looking to like avoid this thing? And what I said about this non-deterministic thing, you know, the verdict's out. You know, so some PhD might say, no, it's all decided. Like your muscle fibers, like guaranteed you're going to make it this far in your sport or whatever. And it's like, I'm not here to figure that out. All I'm saying is it doesn't pay to believe that it's deterministic. Like I could be on the Truman Show right now.
And you can't prove it.
Right.
And so we're talking about whether the Earth's flat or round. Doesn't matter to me at all. My life goes on the same kind of way. The car still goes 100 miles an hour, all of that.
Totally. So it's like, well, where's the upside? You know, like if I'm on the Truman Show right now and like all this is fake, you guys are all actors, this whole thing's controlled.
I am an actor.
I don't have a say in like how the future goes. All I'm saying is it doesn't pay to believe that. Even if it was true, it pays to believe that I have some sort of control. You know, like if you tell the 12-year-old kid like, well, no, based on your muscle fibers, you're just not going to be an NBA player. It's like, well, all right, so why do I do any of this? Or do I run these sprints, or do I get under this heavy bar and see what? Even if you move the needle 0.5%,
let's see what develops.
That is the 0.5% that you can control. Are you willing to give that up? You know, I don't think any of us are that good.
Well, I think that we don't think that it's possible too. I think there's that kind of thing is like you have to get shown that this is a route, you know, and we're not shown a whole lot of routes that are viable or that are beneficial. Most routes are colored in commerce or in a lot of other things that are distractionary, but to get a route about your choices, about each of your choices. And you can do this stuff like in your daily life, little by little.
And here's the ultimate kicker. Like if I was going to like say like the nail in the coffin concept here is, and I need to be specific in how I say this because it is not an excuse to half step. Okay. You have to go about your business as if idealism is possible, right? Because if you go into it, it's like, you know, pick the example. It's like if you go to the jiu-jitsu tournament and you're like, well, you know, it's probably not realistic that I win this thing, then you're already being
all the odds. This guy did this many tournaments before. This guy, my numbers just don't match.
You're already being a bitch, and when you lose, you already have your reason why you lost and the whole thing. Okay, so you have to go about your shit as if the peak expression is possible. Now, that being said, if you do that, what I'm proposing is it doesn't actually matter if you reach it.
Right.
If you go about it with full vulnerability and belief and conviction in the thing. Because I'm sure you wanted, I don't know, I'm making an assumption. I'm sure you wanted something more from maybe your fight career.
Of course.
I fell flat on my face with my
bitter
baseball career.
Sure.
Right. Okay. But what I'm saying is that the fruits of engaging in these pursuits, not half stepping, pays dividends that make it such that it doesn't really even matter.
You know what's even scarier is what would I be had I not?
Right.
What kind of emptiness is that? You know, I mean, when I was from sitting now and going, oh yeah, but good Lord, man. Thank God for the try. Thank God for the try.
And so based on that truth alone, the notion or the chance that you might not succeed at what you're trying is not a reason, not a justifiable reason for not doing it.
I fucking love that.
It's just mathematically not, you know? And that's why as like an employer or just a friend or a, you know, whomever, entrepreneur, I'm so down to fuck with people who just got smashed in something for 10, 20 years, trying to reach their peak expression in anything, underwater, basket weaving, I don't give a fuck. Because I know what that iterates. So I know what that process is like. I know what that cranks out. I know what that reflects. I know what that develops. Because, you know, like there isn't shit about throwing a baseball 90 miles an hour that shows up in my life today. But building that capacity
shows up everywhere.
Yeah.
You
know? And so that's kind of the kicker, because that is one of the biggest reasons why people don't, press the big red button and go for it on these things, is they're like, I just can't be sure. I can't reconcile that this is going to work out. And I'm like, dude, change your mind. Get 5 years in and honest to goodness, change your mind. Like, don't quit because it gets hard, but like experience. I mean, imagine if you lived to 90 years old and you were a savage in your pursuits of everything that you were interested in. Imagine who that person is on their 90th birthday. That's like such a cool thing to think about.
That's a life.
Versus like this lie that you're safe in guarding these learning
not
environments.
Trying and not exposing yourself. That you're supposed to expose yourself. Like, that's the truth, I think, of it, is like, and without that, the loss is mine. And I think I love the way you talk about it. It's like, it's not better this way. If you don't dig into it, it's not like, we can see that.
Mm-hmm.
But also the double-edged win is that it's so tremendously advantageous the other way in a myriad of ways that we can't.
Totally.
There's not enough time to point a finger at them all.
And that's and this isn't even an opinion. I mean, it's just much more fragile to live under the guise that you are truly seeking safety. You are seeking the most dangerous existence possible if you're avoiding these types of learning rich environments. So pick. It's easiest to talk about career, but it's like pick. Whatever's hot, right? It's like maybe you're like medical imaging, right? Okay, so it's like 10 years ago, and you're like, yo, I'm gonna go to this community college, get this medical imaging shit, and I'm gonna, make 90 grand and get these benefits. And it's like, okay, so you have no interest in that. You're clocking in, clocking out. You're literally trying to just not get in trouble at work, is what that looks like. Okay. And it's 2019. I mean, we're like minutes away from you not mattering fucking at all.
Right.
Okay. And so for the last 10 years, you have been stuck in like the little bouncer you put babies in. You're fucking worthless. Right. So that job disappears. And now you're like, well, no, I'm going to get another job. And you are just completely unremarkable. Right? Versus you spend those 10 years doing something that shows you who you are to your face over and over and over and over again. It doesn't really matter what happens there, right? In the quote unquote risky thing. You were just more developed in general, highly transferable ways, And so people, in the name of safety, build the most dangerous shit ever.
Yeah.
What are you going to do, man?
Yeah.
You're 40 and you can't do anything.
You're gonna die in your toothpick house,
and
you're forgotten. And the other thing is like, to be like in this realm of the only way to have longevity in the game is to be in the game, because it changes so quickly that if you're not in it, you don't get the nuance of change, and you can't be with the flow. If you're in school, you missed the boat already. I'm sorry. That's a wrap, unless you want to be my dental hygienist or something, right? It's like they're very, I mean, even guys that I know that are lawyers and all, they're like, dude, all great until you're in it. You don't know in it. You begin learning once you're in it. It's that idea of like, once you get the black belt, now you can start to learn. It's like you get enough stuff out of the way that you can be available to be in experience. You must be in experience. Otherwise you're inexperienced, and then you don't have any value to your community, to your boss, to your whatever. I feel like that if you could have altered something in the past, you wouldn't have, as far as your own development. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it's true. I mean, it's funny, the version of that question that's like often asked, right, is like, regrets, like, do you have any? And then everyone's answer is like, no, because then I wouldn't be who I am today. And like, I always wonder, like, is that real? And I think it's real. I mean, I have a life that I'm very grateful for that wouldn't be real without the path that I walked, And so, here's maybe like the unpopular way to answer the question, which I think is true, which is like, even if I could, it doesn't pay to think that I should have. You know, what about that affords me anything today? You know, and maybe that's like the corny answer one step further. You know, I had a linguistic teacher tell me she doesn't answer what if questions. So what if? No, don't do it. Miss me with that. It's like, it just doesn't pay to consider that. And so, yeah, I think my answer is I wouldn't change anything. Also, like, it's if I took 5 minutes to answer something else, it'd be a waste of 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know.
What about telling another 15-year-old?
What do you mean?
I mean, what do you like that? When I think about that question, I think, yeah, I don't have much to say about it except to say I wish I would have dug in more. I wish I would have invested more in my tries earlier. Like, but I was a little fraudulent because I was tempering it with this idea of safety and what all the adults were saying. And I thought, and I didn't really give in to what my soul said, because my soul said a lot of shit that ended me up in jail a lot of times too. And so I was hesitant and avoidant of that. So in that too, I wish I'd have it's weird to say trust yourself as a 15-year-old because that's a bad bet. But like in that way, I wish I'd have dug in a little deeper, you know?
It's funny because when I answered the question, I hadn't sort of like fact checked it in my head, you know, like it wouldn't pay to do whatever. And then when you said that, well, what do you tell a 15-year-old? I think it fact checks what I just said, which is the reason why that consideration is different is because this person has a chance to live maybe these years differently. So it's like, yeah, you tell the person whatever it is that would make that thing better. It doesn't pay for you to reflect back on your life, to be like, you know, I'm going to spend 3 hours today thinking about all the shit I would have done different.
But then is the payment supposed to be for me or for a community of going, here's the richness of your life of what you've garnered. Now fucking please let the rest flourish better.
Totally. Right. And that's why I think the answer is totally you advise the 15-year-old on all of the things that you maybe would do different.
And he's not going to listen to nothing.
That's right.
I love you. I got to close up, but where can people find you and where can people find a copy of Going Right and all your gym and your seminars and everything that is Logan Gelbrich?
Well, holdthestandard.com is a website that has all of the education things that I do. So the summit, the online courses for entrepreneurs and coaches. The book Going Right is on Amazon, and I'm at Functional Coach. You can find all the different gym information at DEUCEGym.com, DEUCEGYM.com. And not hard to find.
Also, just for a tip in, like a nice, like everybody asks, like, how do you start the day? How do you do this, that, or whatever? For a nice, short, consistent nugget of a blog, DEUCE Gym is a great place, and there's a new article up every single day for the last gang of years. And it's nice just in, like, you know, not having a monkey mind all day, and maybe you can focus on something else. It's a great place to start. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Love you,
people.
Buddy.
And we'll do this again soon. Guys, thanks a bunch for listening. As always, Pirate Life Radio is brought to you by a whole ton of beautiful folks. And part of that is Primal Kitchen. It's always been one of the sponsors on the show. Mark Sisson, a great friend. I got to see him take this company from an idea in his head into sales to Heinz Kraft just bought them. And he's still running it. And when you clean up your diet and start eating real food, what you notice is that the sauces often contain things that are not maybe the best for you. A lot of sugars in there, a lot of dyes, fillers, etc. And so he saw this as a problem, and he goes, I want to make dressings and condiments that are awesome and that don't mess up. Basically what he was doing is keto before keto became a ubiquitous term. And so he wanted things that weren't going to spike any part of his nutritive benefits from food in a way that was going to be maladaptive for his performance and outcome that he wanted, which was to stay in ketosis and to perform highly on an athletic level. So that's why Mark created Primal Kitchen. Condiments, dressings, easy to add add uncompromising, delicious flavor to every single bite. Primal Kitchen's collection is free of gluten, grain, soy, refined sugars, dairy, or canola, or other industrial processed seed oils. He's one of the first to market with avocado oil mayonnaise, which is goddamn delicious. He's got a chipotle one that's one of my favorites. So anyway, please enjoy every one of your meals with extra serving sauce inside. And don't forget, when you go out and you're in the world, man, it's the sauces that kill you. I used to think ketchup was just, French fries were the vehicle that you would get ketchup in, but all I was doing was eating sugar. It's all that's in that. And so anyway, do yourself a favor. Check them out, and you might start living a life that was beyond your kind of dreams. Next sponsor is Bonafide Provisions, another one that I mess with continually. I've loved them for a long time. They make true bone broth. I also had the founder of Bonafide Provisions. The backstory of it is just beautiful. Sharing what she put together in this company was she saw problems with her child and wanted to readjust his gut health, which we're finding more and more. The gut-brain health, they're not dissimilar, and they both need to be addressed. And a lot of the ways you can address them is by taking only nutritionally dense foods into your body that aren't very hard to break down. And so that's why she created bone broth. The way, as she says, our ancestors used to make it. It uses only grass-fed and pasture-raised bone. It's slow simmered for a minimum of 18 hours, and it's certified organic. It gels, and it's frozen fresh. So being frozen fresh, it doesn't lose nutrients. It locks it in. That it gels on the top, it'll kind of coagulate. That's the wrong word. I guess gels is probably the right word. However, it'll get that skin on the top of it, and that's all the fats, everything that doesn't remain liquefied at refrigerated temperatures. It gets thick. That's how you know that it's good. There's a lot of bone broth out there that I've seen that it's just loose liquid, and that's basically just like, I think, broth in it. But this bone broth, it's curative, a lot of collagen in it, and it helps all aspects of your health and fitness, from your ligaments to your skin to your eyesight it's got a benefit for almost everything that ails you. So anyway, Bonafide Provisions, you find them at bonafideprovisions.com, and listeners can get 20% off their first online order when they use the code Pirate Life at checkout. I'll get it out eventually. Listeners get 20% off their first online order when they use the code Pirate Life at checkout. Another sponsor you might have heard of, we talked about it here before, is Caveman Coffee. Pirate your life back with products you can trust. Try our Nitro Cold Brew, the #1 cold brew on Amazon, for 8 or 9 months since we've been out. It's been #1, and I love the feedback. Thank you guys. And please, if you are going to Amazon, leave a little review. Give us a rating. Helps us out a bunch. And looking for a new 6-pack coming out soon. We used to just have 12 packs we sold by. And now if you just want to try it, or you want to try a 18-pack, we got that availability for you. So we got that 6-pack on its way out with our next brew that we're going to put together in the next 3 weeks. And when I want a hot coffee, I always go for that Sabertooth roast. It's our darkest roast. It's a full body flavor. And I really, really, really love the flavor of that. All our coffees fantastic. You can use my code Tait Fletcher for 15% off your order on our website, cavemancoffeeco.com, and please leave a review. One of my great friends in this world, Doc Parsley, man. Kirk Parsley is a Navy SEAL who, from the Navy SEALs, he got medical school. And then he came back and he became a doctor for Navy SEALs when he saw a problem with performance of guys that were in the field, that were action and combat-based veterans that were still performing. He saw that a lot of their variables and their biologic metrics were messed up, and he wasn't able to attack any of those, like low testosterone, et cetera. But what he did see is that they all had Ambien on their jackets, and he knew that they didn't have an Ambien deficiency. So he set about how to get a natural result of sleep, which is the only place where we could get regenerative, restorative health. It is the one thing that nourishes us, is deep REM sleep. It takes care of oxidative stress. It takes care of a lot of the synaptic function of your brains, and it's the only place you can heal really from strong concussion, whether it's from noise or whether it's from an abrupt combat situation or gunfire in like close proximity. All these things cause TBIs. And the only thing that can help reset TBIs, one of the only things, is deep nourishing sleep. And if you don't get in that REM sleep, you can't ever recover. And then all your biometrics start to go down, which is what he was finding with the team guys. So he made up this sleep remedy. It's called Sleep Remedy. You can find it at docparsley.com. That's just DOCPARSLEY.com. It's been specifically designed to replenish the nutritionally and stress-induced deficiencies that interfere with normal physiologic cascades that lead to deep, restful, and restorative sleep. This product aims to lay the foundation for the best sleep possible and therefore help you optimize all facets of your life. Doc Parsley's Sleep Remedy is designed to restore commonly deficient nutrients associated with sleep. In Doc Parsley's experience, once these nutrients have been restored to optimal levels, most people have vastly improved sleep. Your body is still doing all the work. We're just giving your body the materials it needs to help create great sleep. And that's what I found with it. I've used it to great success, and I don't need it all the time. I sleep really deeply and greatly. I used it for about 1.5 years straight. Fantastic product, docparsley.com. Also, my friends over there at Jumbo Superfoods, and you can find them at Jumbo, Jambo, superfoods.com. They make the world's highest quality hemp oil CBD products. They're all natural ingredients, full spectrum hemp, no compromise. It's family owned, made in America, a great group of people. All the people that are involved in that, I know personally, and they're fantastic fucking humans just trying to make life better. Check them out at Jumbo Superfoods. And another adjunct to that, what they're doing is they made some toothpaste and oral care products that are really new. It's called The Dirt. GiveMeTheDirt.com. You can learn more about them. And so they're really hip on what absorbs in the bodies. The mouth is one of the most absorbed places in the body. And so they started to think, why are we going to put deficient oral care in our products? So they started making new stuff. So check them out. GiveMeTheDirt.com. And finally, Sauna Space. Sauna Space is a sauna tent. I've got them in my house. My mom's got it in her house. You can escape the microwave EMF, bathe in nature's red light. Try out Sauna Space's new thermal light technology, and I think that you just love it. You can get into a deep sweat. It's a deep restorative place. I do a lot of meditation there, and you get this near infrared experience, which has a benefit to your mitochondria that I am not smart enough to explain, but it causes a lot of help and help for getting your body back into line so you can perform at your best. So saunaspace.com, please check them out, and thank you. And again, if you like the radio podcast, please leave us a little comment and go ahead and rate us on iTunes or wherever you find your podcast. And I'm really fucking grateful. Thank you all very much, and see you next time.